There are 220,000 jars of jam sitting in a California warehouse right now. Not on shelves, not in transit, not sold. That number did not come from a press release. It did not come from a tabloid leak. It came from a website bug discovered on the 6th of January, 2026. Reddit users found that the As Ever website revealed full inventory totals when you added unlimited quantities to your cart. 220,000 jars of jam, 30,000 jars of honey, 90,000 candles, 80,000 tins of flour sprinkles, 70,000 bottles of wine, $21.8 million of unsold product. The brand had an explanation ready within hours of the story breaking. 8 weeks later, the brand's own spokesperson contradicted that explanation word for word. The receipts are public, the contradiction is on the record, and the warehouse does not move. Now, this matters more than another celebrity brand story. And because the As Ever expansion is being sold to the public as a confident commercial plan, a brand standing on its own 2 feet, a lifestyle business that is consistently selling out in record time. Those are not my words. Those are the exact words used by Netflix's chief content officer, Bela Bajaria, on the record in August of 2025 to justify a major partnership renewal. 5 months later, the warehouse numbers became public, 220,000 jars of jam sitting still. By every available signal, the gap between the public story and the documented inventory is wider than the brand can explain. And underneath that gap sits something even harder to walk back. The food export rules, the country-by-country compliance work, the boring, public, fully documented regulations that every food exporter in the world already understands and routinely plans around. None of which the public story about As Ever international expansion appears to have factored in. Tonight, we are not asking what the brand says. We are asking what the documents say. And the documents tell a very different story. Tonight, we are going through the full sequence, the 8-week contradiction between the 2 on-record explanations from the same brand, the regulatory wall sitting between a California warehouse and an Australian shelf, the 5-month gap between Netflix calling As Ever a record-breaking commercial partner and Netflix walking away from the equity entirely, the 12-category trademark in Australia that suggests the actual plan was always bigger than jam, and the wider question that ties all of it together. Why does the same pattern keep showing up in the same shape with the same people year after year? Let's start with the brand itself, because the position As Ever holds matters for what comes next. As Ever is the lifestyle business launched by Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, after the Sussexes left their roles as working royals. It was developed in partnership with Netflix, which initially held an equity position alongside the streaming deal. The product line includes jam, honey, herbal teas, candles, edible flower sprinkles, and wine. The brand markets itself as a curated lifestyle range. Quiet luxury. Hand-finished. The visible commercial face of the broader Sussex commercial life in California. The Netflix partnership was, until March of 2026, the engine underneath it. Netflix produced the content, Netflix carried the visibility, Netflix put the chief content officer in front of microphones to confirm that the products were consistently selling out in record time. That phrase appeared in the public statement that justified the extended deal in August of 2025. Reportedly, the language was chosen carefully. Reportedly, the language was approved by both sides. And the fact that the chief content officer of the world's largest streaming platform put her name to those exact words is what makes the warehouse glitch land with the weight it does. Because 220,000 jars of jam sitting still in a California warehouse 5 months after that phrase was used in public is not consistently selling out in record time. It is the opposite shape of what consistently selling out would look like. Now, let's talk about the 8-week contradiction, because this is where the receipts start refusing to fit together. On the day the warehouse numbers went viral, sources described as having direct knowledge of the business spoke to People magazine. Their exact phrasing was, and I quote, "It doesn't take a genius to work out that what is left points to a company doing extremely well." That large stock order was obviously part of the international expansion plans the Duchess has spoken about for the brand. The word used was obviously. Not reportedly, not potentially, obviously. An active plan already underway that explained the manufacturing scale. A confident, unnamed source explanation delivered to a major outlet within hours of the story breaking. 8 weeks later, ITV News reported that Meghan's trip to Australia included private business meetings aimed at expanding as ever internationally. Journalists started asking direct on-record questions, and the As Ever spokesperson issued the following statement, on record, to the press. This is speculation. No decisions have been made about when or where international expansion might take place. Entering new markets is a considered process 8 weeks earlier, obviously part of an active international expansion plan already underway. 8 weeks later, speculation. No decisions made. A considered process. Now, here is the part that lands. A spokesperson does not describe as speculation a plan that simply changed. Changed plans are described as changed plans. They have a before and an after. Speculation is the word used for something that was never confirmed as a real plan in the first place. Something asserted privately to a trusted outlet under cover of unnamed sourcing, but cannot be asserted publicly to a reporter who will ask follow-up questions. Speculation is not a plan that changed, it is a plan that was never built. If Palace Insider is giving you the documented sequence that other channels skip, hit the like button. It genuinely helps us reach more people who want this kind of close reading work. Now let's talk about the regulatory wall, because Lady Colin Campbell named it on camera, plainly and correctly, in another broadcast. Her statement was simple. You cannot export food from one place all over the world because each place has different rules and regulations. That is the entire problem in plain English. Australia, the specific market the Sussexes visited for private business meetings, operates one of the more rigorous imported food regimes in the world. All imported food for sale must meet biosecurity import conditions under the Biosecurity Act of 2015 and the Imported Food Control Act of 1992. Risk category food is tested on arrival and held until results are returned. Shipments that fail do not sit waiting for resolution. They are re-exported or destroyed at the importer's expense. The FDA in the United States provides export certification for human food products. As of 2024, that certification covers exactly 6 destination markets: Chile, China, the European Union, Saudi Arabia, Taiwan, and the United Kingdom. Australia is not on that list. The European Union requires novel food compliance assessments for products without a prior history in EU markets. Japan requires specific health certificates and radiation testing documentation. South Korea requires Korean language labeling prepared to specific regulatory standards. Every market is a separate project, not a label change, not a minor reformat, a complete separate compliance process per country. The stock sitting in California right now was manufactured for the United States market, United States labeling, United States ingredient documentation. To sell any of that jam in Australia requires reformatting all labels, getting the product through the Bicon inspection system, and potentially dealing with testing hold requirements before a single jar reaches a shelf. The 220,000 jars cannot be shipped internationally under their current formulation. That is not a delayed launch. That is a product rebuild conducted per market with its own separate timeline and its own separate cost in each country. Now let's talk about Netflix. Because the 5-month gap is specific and the numbers sit in very uncomfortable proximity. In August of 2025, Netflix announced the extended deal. Bela Bajaria put her name to the consistently selling out in record time phrasing. 5 months later, the website glitch revealed the warehouse. In March of 2026, Netflix exited the equity position entirely. Reportedly, Netflix distributed its share of the product inventory internally to its own employees, which is the polite way to unwind a partnership when the inventory will not move through normal channels. The brand is now, in its own spokesperson's phrasing, standing on its own 2 feet. Standing on $21 million of unsold stock with expiration dates ticking forward at the same pace they always tick. Either the products were genuinely selling out in record time in August and something catastrophic happened to sell through in the following 5 months, which would be a remarkable commercial collapse requiring its own explanation. Or the selling out characterization described only the small, deliberately limited drops. The launch batches calibrated to sell quickly and create visible scarcity moments, while the bulk manufacturing run sat untouched in the same warehouse, in which case the chief content officer of Netflix put her name to a description of a fraction of the inventory position. There is no third option, there are only those two. Subscribe to Palace Insider and drop a comment below. Did Netflix walk away because the brand was failing, or because Netflix saw the warehouse numbers 6 months before the public did? Both readings have evidence behind them. Now let's talk about the 12 category trademark, because this is where the story gets bigger than jam. The as ever trademark filings in Australia were lodged with the Australian Intellectual Property Office in September of 2024. They were approved in June of 2025, 18 months before Netflix exited. 12 categories: skincare, candles, clothing, jewelry, homeware, podcast, yoga straps, pet feeding mats. A food and condiment brand does not need yoga straps in its trademark portfolio. A strawberry spread does not need pet feeding mats registered in its name. What those 12 categories suggest is that the Australian filing was never about protecting a jam business. It was about protecting a significantly broader lifestyle operation that had been planned considerably further in advance than the launches suggested to the public. The jam was the visible commercial entry point. The thing that generated the lifestyle content, the celebrity gifting, the sold out launch moments, the Netflix association, the 12 categories were the actual footprint of what the business was being built toward. And here is the part that sits underneath all of it. Registering a trademark in Australia does not certify a food product for sale in Australia. Those are two entirely separate processes. You can trademark a name in 12 countries. You cannot trademark a regulatory pathway. The jam still has to clear BICON. The labels still have to be reformatted. The compliance timeline still has to run. Now let's bring this back to the wider frame, because the pattern Lady Colin Campbell has named is the pattern that ties this whole sequence together. Lady Campbell, researching her 2020 book on the Sussexes, found something specific about Meghan's behaviour in the years before any meaningful public profile. Reportedly, while working in film production circles, Meghan required hotel check-ins under a pseudonym, citing safety concerns. Before the royal engagement, before any global recognition, at a point when, by Lady Campbell's own assessment, the wider American public would not have recognised her in a supermarket. The pseudonym before the fame. The elaborate security protocol before the security need. Now look at 2026. Multiple security escorts at a fashion show in a room full of celebrities with far larger global profiles. Magazine exclusives for a British Airways anniversary card. A reported inability to shop at a grocery store due to overwhelming public attention. A Geneva appearance where the audience was small enough to have fit comfortably in a much smaller venue. Tom Bower, who has written extensively on the Sussex commercial story, has documented the same wider shape across multiple books. Reportedly, the props change with each setting, the performance does not. Harry visited Ukraine without anything close to the operation that travels with Meghan to a fashion show. Catherine shops without reported incident and without a magazine exclusive about the experience. What observers keep noting is that the gap between the level of attention being performed and the level of attention being independently documented has been consistent across a long enough period that it is no longer easy to explain as coincidence. And the latest version of that pattern is a jam brand whose international expansion cannot currently be internationally expanded. To be fair, the counter-argument exists and deserves a clean version. A reasonable defender of the As Ever plan would say that every consumer goods business carries warehouse stock. Manufacturing happens in volume, releases happen in batches. The fact that 220,000 jars exist in a warehouse is not in itself evidence of commercial failure. It is normal retail practice. Plenty of food brands hold inventory for months. Plenty of brands plan international launches well in advance. The trademark filings in Australia are exactly what a serious brand would do 18 months before entering a new market. That reading has genuine merit. The reason it does not fully hold is the 8-week contradiction. A brand that is genuinely executing a planned international launch does not have one source briefing People magazine that expansion is obviously already underway, and then have an official spokesperson call the same expansion speculation 8 weeks later. A brand executing a real plan describes the plan consistently. The shift from obviously to speculation is not the shape of a coherent commercial operation. It is the shape of an explanation that did not survive being asked direct questions on record. Let's go back to the warehouse. 220,000 jars of jam sitting on California shelves, $21 million of unsold product with expiration dates running, a brand whose own spokesperson cannot tell the same story twice in 8 weeks, a streaming partner that walked away from the equity 5 months after publicly praising the sell-through rate, a trademark filing in Australia that protects everything from yoga straps to pet feeding mats, but cannot certify a single jar of jam to cross the Australian border. The People magazine source said the warehouse pointed to a company doing extremely well. The spokesperson 8 weeks later said no decisions have been made. Radar Online reported with insider sourcing that Harry is privately in despair about the soaring costs tied to the global expansion plan. A man who gave up his country, his family, his military career, and his entire institutional identity to build a new life is reportedly watching the finances of that new life and landing on despair about jam expansion costs. That is not a small signal about the state of the operation. The warehouse is still full. The contradiction is still on the record. The regulatory wall is still standing exactly where it stood in 1992 when Australia first wrote the Imported Food Control Act. And the warehouse does not move. So here is the question for you. Was the international expansion ever a real, considered business plan that simply ran into unexpected regulatory obstacles? Or was the expansion always a story being told to the press to explain inventory that was manufactured at a scale the actual commercial demand could not absorb? Drop your honest take in the comments below. Subscribe to Palace Insider so you do not miss what comes next. And a like genuinely helps us reach more people who want this kind of documented analysis. See you in the next one.